HR leaked my sexual harassment case to a coworker.
I went through an extremely difficult period at work from February to July of 2017. I was working in a very unpleasant, hostile environment with a coworker named Tom, who wouldn't stop making inappropriate and vulgar sexual advances toward me. I did everything I was supposed to do. I clearly told him to leave me alone. I stopped communicating with him outside of work. I went to HR, and I documented everything that was happening. Throughout this entire process, I repeatedly told HR that I wanted everything to remain strictly confidential, and they promised me again and again that it would be. There were two HR employees handling my case: the head of HR, James, and the person mentioned in the title, Jessica. She was the first person I confided in, and she became my main point of contact throughout the sexual harassment complaint. Last week, I found out that she has a very close friendship with another coworker who works in our labs. We're a STEM company. He has absolutely no connection to HR, and therefore had no right to know anything about my case. I don't want to explain how I found this out, but please believe me when I say I am 100% certain that she told him about my sexual harassment complaint. I don't know how many details she shared, but I do know that she told him that I had filed the complaint. I am furious because she chose to reveal my identity, while keeping the identity of Tom, the person who harassed me, confidential. I also feel deeply embarrassed and violated. It already took an enormous amount of mental and emotional energy for me to come forward and officially file a complaint against Tom. To make matters worse, Jessica is leaving the company for personal reasons at the end of this month. Is there even anything I can do at this point? Should I confront her directly? Should I bring this to the head of HR? I feel completely lost and honestly, deeply betrayed. Any advice would be appreciated. Additional context. I wasn't sure where to include this in the original post, so I'm adding it here at the end. It's important to mention that Jessica has a history of not keeping confidential information private. I'll give a few examples. One of my coworkers, Terry, told me that she had confided in Jessica about issues she was having with her manager. Terry explicitly did not want to escalate the situation to the head of HR, and Jessica was fully aware of that. Despite this, she decided to blow everything wide open and informed not only the head of HR, but also Terry's manager. I also confided in Jessica myself. This was personal, and yes, I now realize I shouldn't have done it. I told her that my mom had been diagnosed with cancer around the same time I was dealing with Tom. The very next day, the head of HR, James, came up to me and started talking to me about my mom. I was extremely uncomfortable, but at the time I didn't feel like it was appropriate to complain about it. Important update. I've just realized that I didn't give enough context to fully explain my situation. I understand that if James were a completely ethical HR professional, the obvious move would be to report this to him. However, my company can be very toxic, and personal boundaries are crossed constantly. I also know that James and Jessica are very close friends. On top of that, something else really worries me. When Terry tried to resign, James outright refused to accept her resignation, involved the CEO, and essentially manipulated her into staying. What the hell am I supposed to do? Relevant comments on me better now. That's terrible that your trust was betrayed like this. Sadly, HR isn't really there to help employees. Their first priority is protecting the company. Yes, that includes their legal duty to prevent workplace harassment, and sometimes that aligns with what you need, but not always. My only advice is to make sure you have independent legal counsel if you don't already. I can't remember the exact details, but I believe there's some kind of service in the US where licensed lawyers are required to participate and offer low-cost initial consultations. Maybe someone else here knows more about that. Author. I completely agree. HR's responsibility is to protect the company. That's why this situation isn't so straightforward. Technically, what Jessica did was wrong, but management at my company is known for crossing professional boundaries. And because we're a relatively small company, it just adds even more fuel to the fire. Tom P222. I'm an HR professional at a large, well-known Canadian company. It would absolutely be appropriate to escalate this to the head of HR. HR professionals have a duty to maintain confidentiality, especially when it comes to complaints and internal investigations. At my company, we're extremely conservative about sharing information even within HR, let alone with people in other departments. If Jessica did share confidential information, you may want to consider filing a complaint against her. That said, since she's already leaving the company, there may not be much to accomplish by going down that route. Either way, you're 100% justified in feeling betrayed. In her role, I honestly can't think of any situation where someone not involved in the investigation should be told about your case. One piece of advice: if you do escalate this, decide ahead of time what you want to happen. What outcome would actually make you feel safe and comfortable at work again? He may ask you that, and you should be ready with an answer. Author. Yes, that's basically the same conversation I had with HR during the sexual harassment situation. At the time, the most obvious solution was for Tom and me to no longer work together, or better yet, for him to be fired. But now, the more I learn about this company, the more I honestly don't understand what actions HR could possibly take that would make me feel safe again. Jessica is universally adored at this company, and management has a reputation for acting in questionable ways. I simply don't feel like there's anyone I can trust. Tom P222. If that's the case, you may want to start looking for new opportunities. No one should have to work in a place where they don't feel safe. That said, I'd still recommend giving HR or management a chance to help. Most people genuinely want to do the right thing, and sometimes management gets painted as the villain more than it deserves. I can only speak from my own experience. If it doesn't work out, continue your job search. And once you find a new position, make sure to mention this incident and how it was handled during your exit interview. Update. 7 months later. I'm always reading updates like these, and I'm constantly amazed by how much support people are willing to give to complete strangers. I'm incredibly grateful that this time, I was the one on the receiving end of that support. When I wrote my original post, I was far too scared to actually leave my company. But all the advice, along with the shocked and angry reactions, really forced me to reevaluate my situation. About 3 months after I found out that HR had leaked details of my sexual harassment case, a coworker completely unrelated to my team came up to me and told me that my manager had been talking to her about being unhappy with my job performance. Not in any kind of professional setting, but in a casual, friend-to-friend conversation. I already knew he was dissatisfied with my performance. We had discussed it before. What truly upset me was, once again, that same toxic culture. Employees sharing private, sensitive information with people who had no business knowing it. That was the final straw. I started actively looking for a new job, and during that process, I realized just how underpaid and undervalued I had been. There was no room for growth, no real future there. As of today, I've signed a new offer letter, a 45% salary increase, great benefits, a solid title, and work that genuinely interests me, with real opportunities for mentorship and growth. I'm not planning to burn any bridges. I'll wrap up my responsibilities, hand off my work properly, and leave as smoothly and professionally as possible. Thank you all again for the advice and support. It took me some time, but I finally did it, and I'm excited to move forward. I feel oddly sad, and even a little guilty. Leaving this job feels a lot like leaving an abusive relationship. I felt guilty for wanting to leave for so long, so I tolerated a toxic environment, hostile coworkers, and terrible pay for about 5 months longer than I should have. Right now, I feel free, but also a little melancholic. TLDR, I left the company. Hell yes. Final comments, Dreedier. Once you've started your new job, you should absolutely leave a review of this company on Glassdoor. Keep it strictly factual, no speculation, no emotions, and no names. Something as simple as, I left the company because HR did not handle my sexual harassment complaint in a professional and confidential manner. Author. About 10% of employees have left in just the last 6 months, so I think I'd be safe leaving a fairly honest, but still cautious review.
And that's where this story ends. Let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced something similar with HR, or if you've heard stories like this from coworkers or friends. I'd really like to know what you think about this situation. If you found this story interesting, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. There are many more real and powerful stories coming, so I'll see you in the next one.